All right, let's call this meeting to order. Wow, that's good. All right, it's roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor Goodes.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Willman.
Here.
Councilor Hershey.
Present.
Councilor Kell.
Here.
Councilor Davis.
Here.
Councilor Russo.
Here.
Councilor Step.
Yes.
We have a quorum.
All right, let's all join on the national anthem. You're singing.
Oh, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, are there any agenda changes or conflicts of interest tonight? Seeing none. Next item, citizens appearing before council for items not appearing on the agenda. Is there anybody first in council chambers that would like to speak on items not appearing on the agenda? All right, seeing none, I will turn it over to our online group to see if there's anybody that would like to give comments for items not appearing on the agenda. All right, seeing none there either, we'll bring it back to council comments. Paul.
Just a quick one. I've been reminded by the River Commission that the River Fest again is August 7th. It's on Saturday. It'll have cleanup in the morning and then another event at the park, Rivers Park afterwards, I believe. It'll have a band and food, and it's a great time to be a part of the community. And what they're looking for right now is to go online for the city and sign up, get your team going, and be a part of this. Another great community event. So, with the invitation there.
I'm sorry, Paul, what day was that?
August 7th.
Saturday.
That's Saturday. Just want to make sure I get that right.
I think that is in fact.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to bring up the fact that farmers market or the downtown market every Tuesday night has really made an amazing transformation from what it used to be. Now they've, moved down to our Festival Street on 7th Street, and there is 6 times the vendors, food vendors, art vendors that we ever had in years past, and it is an amazing amount of vitality that is brought into downtown. It looks honestly just like a incredible festival every Tuesday down there with live music, and it fulfills the vision of 7th Street to me as I look at that. So I'd encourage everybody to come down and spend some time there and enjoy what downtown Glenwood and that festival has to offer.
John.
Yeah, just to, had a meeting with the tourism board or subcommittee tourism board, and on August 15th, which is a Sunday at 5 o'clock, the first Rocky Mountaineer train, which is a new commercial train that's going through Denver and Moab, is going to come through, and we're planning a fairly extensive welcome event. So if you have time to put it on your calendar, it arrives at approximately 5 p.m., and we're going to be doing a number of things. We'll get more information as we have it, but that's happening. The second thing I want to say is welcome back, everybody. It's nice to be back in the list.
What was that date again?
August 15th, it's a Sunday.
I just had a quick comment and kind of a question for council and the city manager. We're experiencing, along with many of the small towns and mountains, at crisis and being able to get employees and affordable housing, but also in daycare. There's been a shortage in daycare for years and years and years, and now post-COVID, it's at crisis level. So I've had some conversations with Deborah about the potential. We have the facilities potentially at the community center to create a city-run daycare, and just wondering if council would be interested in having our city manager and possibly Parks and Rec director just take a preliminary exploratory look at and see if that's something we want to move forward.
You're asking Deborah to run the daycare center?
No, I'm asking her to do an exploration into the concept to see if that's something that we want to make a feature of our community center.
Okay, I think here, but.
Well, it's only for users.
Oh.
It's for child care
Like
for,
drop-in.
drop-in child care, yeah. Care for the child, not the.
2 hours. 2 hour limit.
So I'd be supportive of that. I hear from a lot of employers that the two things that are really preventing people from re-entering the workforce in this area is cost of housing and childcare. And I've worked in childcare for 7 years, not as a childcare provider, but it's a huge issue in this community. I think those of us who don't have children that of that age don't really understand or remember the stress that is placed on working families. So I'd be very supportive as well of exploring what that might look like. For us to at least take care of our own, city employees first and in the city facility.
Should we make a motion on that? Any directions of that?
Sure, would you like to make that motion?
Do you want to hear it in a motion, or is this, it's just a very preliminary kind of exploration?
I have talked with Brian about it, and I do know we need a whole nother license, and of course, we'd have to be able to hire people to do it.
Right.
So I can
challenge.
Yeah, I can say, yes, we can look into it, but no promises.
Okay, that's all I'm asking.
Do you need any more than just that general direction? I think we all got it.
I think it's fine.
Okay.
And I think, like, in the next year, it'd be great to have, next year maybe, like, it'd be nice to have something to look at as far as the proposal, assuming there's even people to do it. So the timeline's not 8 weeks, maybe 18.
8 weeks.
Mr. Mayor, one more thing. Sure. Chuck mentioned something I forgot. I was at the CML board retreat last weekend at Steamboat, and the new president of the CML board of directors, each president has an initiative, and her initiative is housing. And that ties into what Shelley was just saying. And she's asked me to assist her in that. So I'll be getting more engaged with housing. I'll talk to all of you in a month.
Great.
Yeah. Anybody? I have just a couple things. One, thank you, Alyssa, for, she in here? Thank you, Alyssa, for bringing this all together. I know we weren't quite ready to have the amazing rollout of the new revamped technological wonder that will be Chamber, but she pulled it together because she knew how desperate we were to get back in person and to see the public and staff, and it is really nice. I'll echo Charlie's comments, and we couldn't be here without Alyssa, so thank you. I do. Also, we are, have advocated our, temporarily our oversight of, our city manager, and we have not conducted a review of you in over a year. And so, and we very much enjoyed that, but we do have an obligation to provide her feedback and to do the review, so maybe next meeting, if we want to have an executive session where we sit down and discuss if last year, I think we did a 360, and if that's still a direction we all want to go, that was valuable to council and to yourself, that'd be great.
I believe 360 don't have to be done every year, you can skip one.
Okay.
We skipped one.
Well, we can also talk about that.
Yes.
It's okay.
Carl, when we did it last time, I know Anna sent out a survey or something.
Yeah, that was we worked with an outside, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot, I'm supposed to push to talk. Details, where's the mute button?
Oh, I know.
We worked with I believe we worked with an outside company to develop that, but I think we still have access to that template. And I could also resend out if council wants it, the actual results, so you guys could see the questions that were asked in the format that it was, in case that's something you don't remember. I can certainly do that too.
So can we have, what, maybe 45 minutes for executive session next meeting? Is there anything else? All right, next item on the agenda. Oh, entertain a motion. Charlie, can you give me a motion for the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
That's been moved by Charlie, seconded by Tony. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I know we're still with the hands too. All right, on the regular agenda, item number 10, South Midland update. South Midland update? Oh, there's a hand. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. I'd love to be able to show.
Well, now we're having technical problems.
Sorry, I promoted Kathleen to a panelist. And so I have to participant. Huh. Panelist. There we go. Oh, there we are.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. Kathleen Vonatovich with the South Midland Project. I've got an update for you today. As always, there's a lot going on in this project. So I'll talk about key activities, roundabout phasing, utility work, lane schedule closure, and the first signs of permanent conditions on the project. Some of our key activities right now are working on the retaining walls and the lower wall work. The Shotcrete work is almost complete. You can see that on the wall on the west side, and we're beginning the downhill wall on wall 2. Actually, I wanted to mention Mark Gould is in the crowd as well, and I think Brian is there, and if you have specific questions for the construction team tonight as well. Park West, a lot of work going on Park West. So the east side of South Midland, reconstruction of that sidewalk, new utilities are getting put in, the 18-inch water main, I have a picture of that coming up, the storm sewer and the curb and gutter. Phase 1 of the new roundabout, that's kind of the big scope of work that's happening right now on 4 Mile in South Midland. The work that's happening is grading, deep utilities, and widening of that area. And also the water main is going to be installed in that area. And then the new roundabout leg to the school site is we're working on the grading for that project as well. Black Hills has mobilized out of the area. So that's been helpful as well. We'll have a little bit more space in that area to work. Here is a rendering from, well, this is a plan view from the new roundabout. And this is the area that we're working on right now, phase 1. It's that east area, closest area to the school. And here are future phases. I'll be coming back and talking to you about, the timeline for the future phases. But right now, the phase 1, that east side and the new leg is really the key focus right now between now and August 16th, the day that the elementary school is back in session. I didn't get a picture today. I really wanted to, but we have, where I've got my little blue dot there, is the first bit of the permanent conditions. So Old Cardiff Road has a new road surface and infrastructure in that area, and that is the first sign of some permanent work that is starting to be more permanent. I'll just say what's not permanent is some of the roadway surface. And we've gotten a lot of calls recently and some online chatter about the potholes in the area. This is want everyone to know that we're really still working on a temporary surface condition on South Midland. So we're doing some patching work whenever we get those rains in the afternoon, and we're working on a road that needs grading help. It makes the potholes worse. So we're patching them when we can, and know that I just want everyone to know we're not at a final condition for some of the temporary roadway surfaces that you see out there. All right, I go back to utility work. Here's a picture of the new beautiful 18-inch water line that's going in, and also storm sewer work that's happening in that area. Like I said, roundabout phasing and school coordination. We have a meeting next week with our school folks, and we've got some coordination that needs to be done between now and the start of school, just in terms of the type of construction work that's going to happen and sequencing and making sure we have easy access for the school bus and have a good plan on August 16th when school's back in session. Traffic control, there's still a lot of traffic control in the area. We did put a press release out, I believe it was last week, that was, really asking people to be aware, slow speeds, no texting and driving. There's some of the reports we get from our crews on site is that people are looking down on their phone while they're driving through. And, we just really need to be aware of the type of work that's happening in this area. A lot of trucks are going in and out. So lane closure schedule and Sunday work. I'm going to spend just a minute on this. This was a very hard decision for the city of Glenwood Springs, but also one that is allowable in the contract in terms of Sunday work. We have not had a lot of Sunday work up until this date. But, as a team, we kind of got our heads together and was like, okay, we got a lot to do between now and school starts, that first phase of the roundabout. And so we really are working right now 7 days a week, Monday and through Friday until 4 o'clock, and then Saturday and Sunday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. The Sunday work is really limited to just one area of the road closure. Why we are doing this, it's really necessary to get ahead of the start of the school year, and hopefully on the back end, it will allow us to have a little bit of a winter shutdown break, if you will, as we can get this critical roundabout work and the infrastructure on the Park West side put in. So we have gotten, calls on the hotline and talking to residents. I believe it was yesterday we had a water line tie-in that was just really critical to coordinate with our city water department, and it did extend the work further. If you're signed up to get the notified me's, Brianna is really great about getting those out right away on her end for the city, and letting people know that there is going to be a little bit longer of a delay in the traffic. We do have our community CCC meeting in August, and I just wanted to let the council know this has been a group that we've really tapped into lately, asking them for very specific feedback, and they're a very helpful and very active group and provide us with great feedback. I'll just put this up for a second for the public record, but the communication tools are out there as well. And please feel free to contact us anytime for the general public. So I'll just say that the project team is very aware of the type of impacts that are happening right now with the trucks, the noise, the traffic. We're at the height of summer, the height of construction activity with a lot of teamwork going on. So we just want to thank the community again for all their patience. And, we still have our weekly coordination meetings, which are just a really great way for our team. And we're meeting in person, which is amazing. It's just great to be able to sit down again with each other and look at the plans, look at that 2-week look ahead, and be able to work through that. So I'm sure I left some things out, but I was trying to be brief, and I appreciate you letting me to come tonight. Any questions?
What are the hours going to be, Kathleen? Did you hear us?
Outages?
Okay. Oh, yeah, what are the hours going to be when school starts again?
When school starts again, we'll go back to our regular schedule, which is Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then Saturday and Sunday work can still happen. It just really depends on, what the construction week look like. We don't anticipate Sunday work much more past August 16th. And that's really a day that we tap into when we need it. I would imagine that there still would be Saturday work throughout, and periodic Sunday work throughout the rest of the year. And I think on Wednesday we have we go back to that shorter day on Wednesday too.
But I might suggest that, people be flexible because at least I think school starts, I don't know, with the new regular schedule, but 8:15 to 3 o'clock is the school day. So, if you could shift that potentially, and I see Mr. Gould here, 8:30, I mean, the roads will be cleared out by 8:30, but the 2:50 is going to be prime time for people getting to school. So if that could be shifted a half hour earlier, you'd miss the school traffic. But if you're down to one lane at 3, and you're working right up until 3 o'clock, it's gonna be a mess out there. Does anybody else know exactly what the school schedule is? That was what it was prior to COVID.
Yes, it will be the same that it was last year when they went back in person, which was, I think a slightly later start so that they could
Yeah.
Can't remember. It's like a 9 o'clock start, so they could get everybody in and tested for like a 9:45.
It was 8:15.
Was it
For
earlier?
some of the schools,
For some of the
I think they had
schools.
phased
For
it.
Silvers, yeah.
It was a little bit later start, but maybe more than anything, we could just encourage them to work around that schedule, is kind of what we're getting at.
Yeah, I'm sorry, here.
I don't know, and so this is a hot mic, right? So, we obviously made the adjustments for the summertime because it made sense based on the school schedule, and we saw that traffic, in the springtime when school in the afternoon was definitely a big hindrance, and as we were working further to the north of the project, we started backing stuff up, well before 3 into the 27th Street roundabout and out on the 27th Street bridge and further up North Midland. The belief is that the 9 o'clock is probably good for everything to clear out, but I do think it's a good question to clarify what the school is going on, because I believe they at least released last year kind of in phases while they were working through the COVID issue. So if they all get out at once, it could be a bigger issue at 3 o'clock than it was last year.
And I think it will be all at once, because now they have busing that I think a lot more people are going to be taking advantage of. So maybe we just talk to the schools and see what that best time is. I mean, you need a definitely window to be able to work, but what is that best window?
Well, and I think that's why we're doing a lot of taking advantage of the Saturday and especially Sunday right now, is just trying to get as many hours in as we can. Like Kathleen said, trying to get as much work before school done as possible. There will be some interference with passenger vehicles for school traffic as well as the school pedestrians after school starts. But this push that we're doing right now is to really attempt to keep that to as little of an impact as possible.
And I think I speak for all of us up here when I just extended gratitude to you and all of your staff for working those longer hours, especially on summer weekends when all of us want to be out camping, things like that.
Well, thank you. I know it's kind of an inconvenience to everybody, but we've got to do what we've got to do to get it done, so I appreciate your thoughts. Thank you.
I just want to make one clarification on the schedule. I think I said it, but I want to be real clear. When school starts on Wednesday, it's 9 to 2. So that's the one change. So it's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 9 to 3, Wednesday, 9 to 2. Those are the early release.
And the early release typically is 1:30, I believe, as well. So I don't know that 2 o'clock gets you a whole lot. So.
Okay, we're going to meet with the school district actually. With the school on Tuesday. So we should bring this up with them.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else?
Thanks.
Thank you, Marquette. Thank you, Kathleen.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Bye, everybody.
All right, next item is the DDA board appointment. Hello, Mr. Lee. Hello. So we decided when we kind of revamped the boards and commissions that we were going to interview as a council, as a body, I believe, the DDA, the tourism,
And planning.
and planning commission. So welcome, Mr. Lee. We don't have a very formal interview process. This is a reappointment for those of you that don't know. Chad served for the last 3 years. You're a partner at what law firm? Falcon. So does somebody have?
Can I just comment?
Yeah.
Steve Davis and I are the two council liaisons, and we both highly recommend the appointment, so.
Who has a question for Mr. Lee for his interview? I guess I'll go. What are you excited about in the next 3 years with the DDA? What projects do you want to do? Where do you see it going?
Yeah, it's kind of an exciting time right now coming out of COVID. I'm excited about supporting our local businesses downtown, especially the retail sector, and increasing and maintaining that vibrancy downtown, getting it back. We've got several issues we need to work through in that downtown space, and I think the city, the DDA, and the chamber are working as hard as they can on those. So I'm excited about vitality down there, continued placemaking. I'm excited about 6th Street, doing something over there. It's probably my #1 priority, but I think it's a good time right now. Yeah.
What do you think about North Landing? Do you think that's something that you see as happening in the next 3 years as you're part of the DDA, or?
I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan of some of the concepts that were proposed. I thought they were a bit pie in the sky. I'd love to see something there as a gateway to 6th Street. But if it doesn't happen in the next 3 years, I think the scope might need to be simplified. So, yeah.
All right, thanks.
Oh, okay. Throwing flags.
What do you see, Chad, as the role of the DDA if the city works towards developing managed parking towards downtown area?
Yeah, we certainly wouldn't want to operate that.
Right.
So I think the city hopefully would help to manage that. We've talked about it for years. I think it's time to have a serious conversation about that. I think it's time that we do something about it. So we're happy to support the city however we can, planning, funding, communications with local businesses, which is something we're trying to enhance on our end. So I think that's nice.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Lee.
Yeah, it's great to be back, guys. It's good to see you. Good to see everyone's room. So, yeah.
Do we need a motion?
We do.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I move to appoint Mr. Lee to a second realtor on the DDA.
Second.
I'm sorry, you're the leading one.
Moved by Councilor Wilson, seconded by Councilor Davis. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chad.
All right, item number 12, rapid funding and maintenance IGA in the 26th Street underpass. Do we have a representative from Rapid here? Are we going to have a representative?
We have Terry.
Oh, okay. Harry, are we anticipating somebody from Rapid being here as well?
You know, I thought Kurt was gonna come, but I'm not sure, he's probably expecting it to be later.
Why don't we just move it and take something else and wait for Kurt? I think it'd be good to
Okay.
have a Rapid.
Yeah. Later in the evening or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just maybe take the next item. While you're up here, do you want to run into the move 7?
Yeah. Reopen that presentation. Let's see if I can bring that on.
While Terry is pulling that up, I believe on YouTube, the slides we're showing are gonna be backwards. We will try to figure that out ahead of the 29th.
You promised glitches.
I did promise glitches.
No, it's just the city of Glenwood name that's backwards. The whole, everything else is fine because it's coming through.
Okay, forget what I'm saying.
Just that one.
Okay. Thank you, Alyssa.
All right. Thanks again to Alyssa. So, good evening, council. You guys have seen these slides already, but for public benefit, I'll go ahead and go through this presentation again, quickly. So, This is a module of our RAPTA downtown, or our RAPTA overall transportation study that we did in conjunction with RAPTA. We studied parking, we studied BRT, we looked at multimodal transportation. There were a number of different elements that we will bring back to the council in the following months, but this is our first module. Again, parking has been a long-running discussion since I've been here in 2012. I think we've done 2 different parking studies. A lot of interest in parking, different conclusions from different studies, but we wanted to re-review it with this study because we recognized that we really did see a lot of use, especially downtown during the summer. Also, we do have an existing parking garage that was built in 2013, which we're starting to see issues with in terms of maintenance, and we'd like to see if there could be another revenue source through managed parking. Again, the MOVE study collected parking data from 6th Street all the way through 14th Street and between Bennett and Pitkin. And so we looked at both on-street parking and off-street parking in that area. They did provide some preliminary recommendations for the program. The key findings that we saw through their study were that we are reaching parking capacity in the core area in the summer. We also saw that the parking really filled up at 9 a.m. and then started to our parking capacity started to release at about 4 p.m. So we felt like that was associated with a lot of employee use in our downtown area. Another observation that we saw was that our off-street lots in particular, both on Cooper and on 7th of Colorado and our city parking garage, had a fair number of overnight parkers. Somewhere between 20 to 40% of the spaces were full at 5 a.m. One of the key recommendations was that we implement paid parking in 2022. Again, this was our study area. There on the right, you can see the number of spaces we looked at least in the off-street parking. We did collect data both summer and winter. The summer data had to be derived essentially through cell phone data and satellite imagery due to the COVID outbreak. In the winter, again, we did see the highest occupancy between 7th and 9th Street. Again, highest demand occurred on Friday evenings, where most of us are aware. The Grand Avenue occupancy in itself was less than 30%, except for between 8th and 9th Street. 7th and Colorado lot was full at all of the time periods, except for at 5 a.m. when it was 25% full. The Cooper Avenue lot was 40% full at 5 a.m., and the city parking garage was 20% full. Our summer findings, again, this was our peak season. The city parking garage was at 95% occupied. All of our other lots were at 100% occupancy. And all of our downtown curb space was at 78% occupancy. So the data does suggest that we're reaching parking capacity through most of the core area in the summer and a fair amount of the core area during the winter. Having this much use without management really leads to increased congestion in the downtown area and vehicles circling through our downtown streets looking for parking. There's a higher likelihood of illegal parking. It also can negatively affect business activity if people can't find parking. This is our existing parking program. Again, as you're aware, we have 15-minute and 30-minute spaces across the downtown area. We have a lot of 2-hour parking, but the times of the 2-hour parking vary. We also have parking associated with our bus stops. We have one enforcement officer, or we usually have one enforcement officer, and he or she works 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. We also have a residential permit program between 7th and 10th Street, and they can apply for up to 2 permits. Permits do allow residential parking in the 2-hour spaces for up to 72 hours, with the exception of 7th Street and the 700 block. We currently generate about $40,000 a year, and our parking management in itself costs about $50,000. Some of the short-term recommendations for the study were that we begin to look at a truck loading plan. They were aware, and I'm also aware that we have a lot of commercial deliveries come in, and because we don't have any designated loading zones or times, they come in at all hours of the day, and they take a lane, and it creates dangerous conditions. They also suggested that we work with the businesses on Cooper, between the 700 and 800 block, to look at the parking arrangement there. And I do believe that at this time, those businesses are satisfied with the current arrangement, but we're always open to re-reviewing that. And we did take the truck parking out of the middle of the road, but as many people are aware, trucks still park in the middle of the road, and they just take a lane or walk the center of the road. The study also suggested that we establish weekend enforcement. Our highest demands are on the weekends. They suggested that we update our parking management, go from chalk and a single person walking around to license plate recognition technology. And I know the police department has spent some time getting proposals and looking into vehicles and that technology in specific. They suggested we adjust fines for parking violations. We currently have one fine that we established, or that we leverage against, at every ticket. We don't increase the fines over time. They suggested we improve curb space and signage and markings, and that we implement the paid parking in 2022. The benefits of the paid parking are obviously higher during the summer. We have a lot more use. I think that, with a paid parking program, we would still have issues with our residential parking, as we do today, where the parking from the downtown spills over into the residential area. So some of the reasons to implement paid parking is that it really will help us reduce congestion across our system, and we've received suggestions from other communities about managing the curb space in our downtown to suggest that we manage it to an 85% occupancy level, which does allow for people to come downtown and immediately find a space. I recognize that this is my own family's behavior, that we sometimes don't come downtown because we can't really find a space down there, and we know it's going to be congested. So having spaces available in the downtown for locals and for tourists, I think is important. Having a managed program also incentivizes the use of other modes. So if you don't want to pay to park, you're more likely to bring a bike or to try to walk. It could generate revenue to fund a parking program, as well as for additional capital for future garages and for the garage that we currently have. I think importantly, the council's been interested in transportation demand management, and this is one of the key principles of transportation demand management, trying to create a program where we disincentivize driving and we incentivize other modes. Preliminary thinking about the program that we would like to go back to the business community with would be that we're thinking about management between 6th and 10th Street, in terms of paid management between 6th and 10th Street. 7th Street, again, the boundaries would be essentially the area that we surveyed, as well as all of our off-street parking facilities would be under paid management. Pricing strategies, again, we're evaluating all kinds of different communities around us, from Grand Junction to Breckenridge, Front Range communities, putting those pricing both on and off street into spreadsheets. And when we come back, if we come back to the council, we will bring all of those prices with us so that you can take a look at them. We would like to allow some interval of free parking, whether it's 30 minutes or an hour for each vehicle every day, so that things like takeout or going into a liquor store for a quick purchase, could be made without having to pay for that. One of the concerns that we heard from the business community was that they were concerned where their employees would park. One of the ideas we had was that we potentially could use the wastewater treatment block off of 7th Street as a free or a low-cost permit for employees, so that there wouldn't be very far to walk to their jobs. We would like to evaluate the time restrictions on the city garages and our city off-street lots. We'd like to discourage overnight parking there, residential parking, and encourage business use of those lots. We do think that, we would have to reevaluate our residential permit program, and restructure where the residents could park and where they couldn't park, again, to try to discourage the use of the central business district. Some of the long-term recommendations were that we do evaluate increasing the parking supply. So look into new garages over time, hopefully with a revenue source. Also to evaluate, things like Uber and Lyft as they come into town, and evaluate the use of, or perhaps including, a space for those kinds of drop-offs. So this is our public and business feedback to date, and we have had a couple of meetings, and we've included invitations to downtown residents and businesses, and these are some of their primary concerns and feedback. Again, they were concerned about employees. Where would their employees be pushed to, and what would the cost of the business be? Generally, the business owners that participated believed that it was time to begin a paid parking program. There were concerns about impacts of paid parking on private lots. How would private lots be managed if we had paid parking? Again, they stressed the need for a loading zone to pick up food or alcohol. I think a few of the business owners emphasized that managed parking would not replace the need for additional structures, that we needed to continue additional structures in the future. They also encouraged us to look north of the river, to make sure that we weren't just focused on 7th to 10th, that we included 6th Street as well and looked into the residential areas up there. Brianna has done a great job, and Linda as well, have done a great job of trying to create additional opportunities for both the businesses and our commissions to weigh in on the different aspects of the program and to help us with the structuring of the program. So these are some of those upcoming opportunities that we have scheduled now. With that, I will open it to questions.
Questions?
Carrie, when we look at this, can we look at, I understand through reading through this and your presentation that we're going to try to push people to use other modes of getting to downtown. And I myself actually take advantage of my feet and my bike. But sometimes I can't find a place to park my bike because there's limited. Would that be part of the cost?
That is another aspect of this MOVE study, is a bike and pedestrian analysis, and with that, we were looking at where we establish more bike parking so that we could get more people in by their bikes. So we will look at that as well.
And will the cost that RAFTA is looking at for increased transportation also be presented to us over the next year, just so we can see what that might incur?
So there is a program, Linda, are you still here? They are looking at lease school and trying to create more opportunities for that type of biking in town. But there is no, I think they're asking whether or not there's RAFTA's contributing to like bike corrals and that kind of thing in the downtown.
Oh, I think it's bus transportation, that type of stuff. I know that's long and a big part of this whole picture, but I just didn't know if we'd be seeing that.
You will. Yeah, we'll have those results from the MOVE study as well, both optimization of our local system, Rifleman Springs, as well as the RAFTA system, the Valley Local, Hogback, and then also the VIP. So I can make a lot more information about those.
Great. I like the idea on the weave cycle too, that's great.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, I'll turn to the public for comments. Anybody in the room would like to comment on this agenda item? Mr. Gebhardt.
Thank you, council members. I spoke to you briefly during the work session. I appreciate the time you gave me then. I won't try to repeat myself much, except to tell you that the Transportation Commission of Plymouth Springs has been working on this issue with staff for some time. We're very impressed with the new study and the recommendations it's made. At some parts, those that we aren't as impressed with, we'll tell you that when we get to it. But for the parking, we're very impressed with it. We urge you to read it. I just want to remind you of a few things that we have focused on. There is in your packet a recommendation from the Transportation Commission about how to implement this. In our view, it is managed, first and foremost, not a paid parking system. A managed plan means that you come up with a plan and try to implement it in phases in a way that the public can enjoy. The most important component, it seems, is enforcement of what we already have. Just enforcing the 2-hour limits we have downtown on weekends and evenings when parking is most as high as can generate revenue to fund the rest of it. Right? And if you figure out ways to create zones downtown that make rational sense, and you have a parking manager managing that, taking care of the enforcement aspects, striping the streets, putting up the signs, creating the technological foundation to move the program forward, that's going to do a lot. And we're not even talking about paid parking yet. We're just improving what we have. In future years, such a parking manager might decide to roll out paid parking only in the lots, for instance, and then maybe later in the streets. It's a work in progress, but the first step really needs to happen with you, and I hope tonight, to vote to move this system forward in a managed parking way. Give it some funding, hire a person to really oversee it. There's a great deal of money that the town can make through this process, but more importantly, it's really going to be the foundation of improving the parking situation downtown, which is not, it's not great. On Wednesday, I drove back from a meeting to have lunch. I couldn't find a spot downtown. That's a Wednesday. So I think there's a lot of room to improve, and I hope that the council will move in that direction.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Sheila Martinez, 824 Place. I really support what the gentleman who said. I didn't get his name, and I know he's on a committee, and I know he spent a lot more time working through this probably than I only just see what I do as a citizen. I sit on my front porch, and I see people parking. I don't mind it. I enjoy it. I see tourists coming. They come, they park, they come back with their food boxes, but because they haven't finished their dinner. And we enjoy it. We know it's a tourist town, and people are going to park and they're going to leave. And I would hate to see paid parking. I think you definitely, you probably need somebody to enforce what you have and control it better than it is. But it's a reality. There's lots of cars. We have seen more crowded parking this summer and this spring than ever before. And I suppose it's because of that COVID thing. I don't know why. But it just is what it is. And we watch the people come and go. And I've talked to some people who said, boy, when I go into a town that there's paid parking, I go to the next town. I don't want to stop and start paying for parking. I think there's a way we can accomplish this without paying parking, and I hope that you'll do that. I also want, the enforcement person is a major, major person. I look at code enforcement, and I know they work hard, and I think you need to have someone more hours of the day, and certainly on the weekends, to just force them. But if you're going to find people who park there, and then they leave town, what are you going to do? Send them by mail and ask them to pay $50 or $100? I mean, that sounds ridiculous to me, and I don't think that will work. So I just hope you'll forget paid parking and figure out a way to take care of what we have. Enjoy the tourists. We see them. We're part of it, we're residential, but we know we're in a tourist town. And we live with it, and we talk to the people, and I send people to the restaurants, and I send people all over. And those people that drive in aren't going to get on their bicycles and then find a place. They're gonna walk, and they're gonna park, and they're gonna walk to where they have to go. So work with those people, and, hopefully you can avoid paying cars.
Thank you very much, Sheila. Appreciate that, Colin.
Is my time up?
Yeah, was that subtle?
That's
That was not subtle at all.
I made my point anyway, so.
You did. Thank you very much.
And any way I can help and other residents that can help, ask us, and we'll see what we can do.
Brianna is our public outreach officer, and she will definitely be reaching out to local residents.
about to chase her out the room.
Okay. Shake it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sheila. All right, anybody else from the room would like to give public comment? All right, seeing none, I have attendees. Mr. Kevin Brady, I will promote you to a panelist, and if you could turn on your camera, that would be fantastic. So, hold on.
Really quickly, I just ran into public information. It does look like we had a little bit of a change in schedule for the next transportation commission meeting, which will actually be August 10th, not on August 3rd. So we will make that clarification. Thank you.
Can we switch the screen so we can see Kevin Brady?
Is there a way that we get Kevin Brady on the screen? Yes.
Thank you.
But then I can't give you a timer. You okay with that?
That's okay. Kevin Brady was set a count of 3 minutes, right, Kevin Brady?
Hello? Hello? I don't know if anyone, where? Can you guys hear me?
Thank you.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Where is it even? Hello?
Hello. You have 3 minutes.
Go. Oh, hi, guys. Yeah, I'm sorry. We're just trying to figure this all out. First of all, I just want to say thank you for including us in your meeting. Sharon's with me as well. Some of the things that we were kind of concerned about with the public, with the parking is just the messaging. I brought this up before in that, are people really going to hear that there's limited parking time, or they're just going to hear that there's paid parking? But I guess some of the things I wish that we would address first before we just jump into paid parking has to do with the study, that part of the study that was done on April 30th that talked about addressing employee parking. And in that study, if you guys still have that, on page 5 of 6, it speaks about it. It talks about incentivizing free bus passes for employees, providing free bus service in Glenwood Springs, as well as other services during high demand locations. These are things I don't ever hear about coming up as part of a resolution in the paid parking, but yet it is part of the RAFTA study. And I guess for me, I kind of feel like we're putting the cart ahead of the horse, where we haven't looked at all the issues that we can address first before we turn to the paid parking. For instance, one of them as well would be enforcement. I know that Steve Davis has been a constant critic of the parking behind his business for very good reasons, where there's people that are parking there hours and days, weeks at a time. There's even a trailer currently parked underneath the parking garage on 9th Street, but yet it's not enforced. There's just so many pieces that we would like to see studied and completed first before we completely turn to the paid parking. The one thing that is to keep in mind is that there's talk about, we've spoken to businesses, we've had meetings. We at Cooper Wine and Spirits have received no invitation to any meeting, as far as I know, that has to do with anything about paid parking. The questionnaire that we filled out discussed how to get to your business. It talked about taking a bicycle. It didn't talk about how, what are my feelings, what are some of the ideas I would have for or against paid parking. So that questionnaire, while Brianna does a tremendous amount of work and she's spot on, top of the world for me, that was not the questionnaire I expected to see or to fill out. The other thing about the paid parking that's not getting messaged well is that we're not talking about just downtown businesses. It was brought up in Terry's presentation, that this is going to go into neighborhoods, that there are going to be people that are going to try to avoid the paid parking, especially if you're going to subject them to higher paid parking fees during prime times, during prime hours, during prime days of the week. These people, it's going to influence the neighborhoods as well. And that is something I don't believe is getting messaged. I am through now. Thank you, John. Have a great day.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for those comments. Any other comments from either attendees online or in the room?
You want to say something? Sharon, pretty?
Seeing none, I will bring it back to council for a motion. Councilor Cobb.
I would like to make a motion just based on the discussion that we had at the work session and also the comments that we've heard from the public and the presentation from staff. See if it's something that we can work to as a council. I would move to adopt the managed parking recommendations from the Raston City Move Study, from the Transportation Commission and the DDA. And part of that motion will be to direct staff to begin developing a managed parking plan for the city, including outlining program costs, estimates, and potential revenues, and a plan for that public outreach and stakeholder input. And that is something that we would hope to be brought back to council for further consideration later this fall. That's my motion.
There's a second.
I will second that.
Further discussion?
Just briefly, I support what Shelley has moved, but I also think when that public comes in, we need to consider the fact there is significant, there's opposition, and let's see what we can do to make the program work, to try to meet most of those concerns of the business owners and people like that. I think we've got to be cognizant of that, but I think given the meeting, we're maximizing the parking, it's important we get going.
And I agree. I would expect that to be part of that stakeholder outreach.
Paul.
And in that consideration, would we be looking at the cost of hiring a parking manager to kind of move this along and get us to a point where we have just somebody to actually work on it? I know our staff is tight with all their responsibilities, and I'd like to see what that would cost.
I guess I would leave that for staff to come back as part of the program costs and revenue.
Right, could we find out what that would cost? Yeah.
Yeah, so with it coming back to us in the fall.
And one thing that I got from the public and from the business owner that spoke is that if we could front end all of this with the public, and I see the dates, just making sure that the community knows about these dates so that we're very community driven in the direction we take it and the way that the staff formulates the plan.
I guess I would say really quickly, I don't believe, just for clarification, Shelley, that you moved to adopt the recommendations to move forward with it, but this is not a vote, just to be clear, to implement and paid parking now. This is just to move it forward, to discuss, to do more outreach, and to adopt the recommendations. Is that correct?
Yes, adopt the recommendations, give staff the go-ahead to start working on developing preliminary outline of a plan, what the revenues might be, what the costs might be, and a plan to do a really thorough stakeholder and community outreach, to the residents, to the businesses, to anybody else who will be affected by any changes we made.
Okay.
So that's what this motion is.
So ultimately, we should anticipate seeing something coming back to us in the fall that gives us some direction and we see some tangible numbers. Is that right?
Staff.
I do believe that is pretty clear. Terry, I just want to check with you and input for you.
Yes.
Does we can do that?
Yeah. Is this motion clear enough?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, Shelley, could we not, with a goal to move forward with a structured program by June 1st, 22?
I would love to see that. But I was thinking that would be something we would address when this comes back in the fall.
I just think we ought to make it clear to staff that we're not talking June of 23, but we would anticipate June of 22.
I'm willing to make my change. It is my second.
Yeah, so ultimately, I feel as though it would be way too short of time span if we're getting recommendations in the fall from staff to be able to implement them and have them in place by the following early summer. So
I would hate to make that promise and then not meet it, right? I really feel like we need a good 10 months to push it to make sure we're doing it correctly. So.
But if staff came back with, saying, these are things we think we can do by Labor Day of 2022. I think we take that direction in the fall.
Paul and then Tony.
I guess what I'm trying to figure out, are you saying we want paid parking on June 1st, or are we saying we want things starting to go on June 1st? We want, whether it's enforcement, whether it's hiring a manager, whether it's doing the paid parking. Steve, what are we asking here?
Well, and I wouldn't expect to have paid parking in place by June 22.
Okay. That's right.
I would be an advocate for that.
Right.
But I think that's probably pushing the envelope a little too far here. But I do think we should have enforcement in place.
Technology.
At least, or whatever, else comes out of your.
Well, my motion says a managed parking plan.
Which could be enforcement.
Right, that would all be part of it.
On some of these areas that we have zero enforcement on.
Right, and again, if we're looking at phasing.
Councilor Hershey.
I really appreciate Rob and Steve's position on this, but I can't support this. Paid parking is really a regressive tax. I think this is way too premature. I think you heard from our city manager that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I think to try to push this through. During the work session, Councilman Davis said, I've seen this on this dais for 25 years and watched it die. And I think there's a good reason. I was actually shocked when this came back. I'll remind everyone that this is not staff-driven. It's driven by an unelected board, by the Transportation Committee that's brought this forward. And there's no public outcry, and you heard from a prominent businessman. I just think it's a bad idea, so I don't support this motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor. Yes.
How would you feel if you added one word into it, and that is a phased managed parking?
into your motion, so that we could see some phasing and some attainable goals.
I'm saying fine adding that. I guess I'd rather leave it up to staff to bring that back to us in the fall. I mean, to me, I think the motion is open enough that they can use the expertise they have and the data they have from the study and recommendations from RASTA, Transportation Commission, DDA to come up with that. And I'm comfortable with that.
No. Yeah.
I guess I'll just say that I'll support the motion, but I'm not voting for paid parking tonight. My understanding of the motion, I will be voting for something that comes back to us in the fall with some form of timeline for implementation of enforcement. And if the public says, start us with enforcement, let's see how it goes, that's the way I'll go. If the public says, we're ready for paid parking, I will be more inclined to follow that. But I'm not ready to make a determination tonight on anything resembling paid parking. And I don't think your motion has that.
No, it doesn't.
Councilor Wellman, last word.
And real briefly, I agree with what Steve said. I'd like to see something, if we can, something in place by June, and we begin, the first step would be in June. What that first step includes, I don't know, but that's our heavy season. So I think that was the intent of Steve's motion, and I certainly would support that timeline if at all possible. And I appreciate what you're saying, Deborah. We don't want to rush it, but if we don't get in by June, it's going to be 23 before it goes effective.
Before you guys vote, I just wanted to say that we do have an enforcement program, we just haven't been able to hire someone. So, we will eventually get somebody hired, if we're looking at increased enforcement. I think that's do we start enforcing on Saturday? We can hire maybe 2 code enforcement. So there are steps we could do for additional enforcement, but we do have parking enforcement when we have a human being to do that.
That's a good clarification. Thank you. It's also a good clarification to remind everybody that everybody's struggling to hire everybody currently, so. Ryan, you take a roll call vote, because I don't know if our buttons work yet, so.
Sure can. Counselor Hershey,
No.
Counselor Cowell,
Yes.
Counselor Wusso,
Yes.
Counselor Davis. Yes. Counselor Stepp.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Willen,
Yes.
Mayor Godus.
Yes.
6-1, passes.
All right. Thank you, Terry. Don't move, because I think we're going to go back to, I hear that Kurt Schlag is not going to be presenting, but do we have somebody on?
Dan was on his way from his office.
Oh, okay. Let's wait for Dan, for sure. So the next item is Resolution 2117, a new fee schedule for the issuance, transfer, renewal, and other related services with medical and retail marijuana licenses.
That's me. Okay, so since the inception to our sales market in 2011 and 2013, Resolution 2011-23 and 2013-35 marijuana fee schedules for medical and retail respectively have not changed or increased since their inception. Basically, they've set the line at $850 for medical for renewals and $1,000 for retail for renewals. So we are currently one of the lowest, pretty much the lowest in the state for population our size, by far. In contrast, for renewals, Parachute is the closest to us. We all know they're quite a bit smaller than us, but they're 2,000, Silts 3,000, Rifles 5,000, Cortez is 5,200, Durango's 8,000, Federal Heights 8,500. So we're quite a bit lower. To quote, I like this quote by Carl earlier. We're not in the business of making money. We're a city, we're a government, but what we are doing is trying to offset the cost the city puts into taking care of a business. And the cost the city puts into taking care of the marijuana industry, we put a lot more into it than we are giving out via fees. And I ask the mayor pro tem, and respective councilors to follow the suggested 2021-17 resolution and raise the fees according to the fee schedule. And I'll take any questions.
Yes, so Brian, we also collect a sales tax on that. Do these other communities that you spoke of also have a similar sales tax level of sales, or is it quite a bit different?
So I spoke to pretty much across the board, every attorney, city clerk, and marijuana board. A lot of these towns and cities have marijuana boards. And they have sales tax. So sales tax taxes the product. Marijuana license fees taxes the actual license, and that taxes the owners of the company. So the difference is, instead of taxing the product, it would tax the owner when they go to renew the license. Right now, so liquor stores are like mom and pop owned shops. We get a lot of them, and the renewals are quite a bit lower because it's liquor stores, completely different industry. But marijuana started off as a mom and pop type industry. But now you look, so we have 13 licenses in Columbus Springs. One of them is owned by an individual who lives in Parachute, and he has one license in Glenwood, Colorado, and one temporary pending. And then there is one, hold on one second.
If I could, Ryan, while you're looking at that?
Am I going to?
No, I just said it's a fee, not a tax.
Yeah, it's a fee, not a tax. Did I say?
Yes.
Oh,
And
sorry.
just following up on that, and so really what you're doing is, so yes, all of those jurisdictions do have, and many of them higher tax rates than we charge here. The fee is really about recovering our costs for administering the license.
Sorry, I should have said that. That was much more clear.
It'll get better as it goes through.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Seeing none, the ordinance or the resolution, is there anybody from the audience who would like to comment? Is there anybody from the virtual audience that would like to comment? I see, Michael Sullivan. No? No, that's Dan Sullivan. No, there's a Michael Saji. I'm going to promote you, panelists.
Yeah. No.
Michael, are you able to turn your video on? Hello, Michael. Hello, Dan. But hello, Michael.
This matter because I know of your concern about it. We got Friday night got a message from Khrushchev, which said that he would withdraw these missiles and technicians and so on, providing we.
Okay, hearing no other further comment of relevance, we'll bring it back to council for a motion.
I would make a motion, Mr. Mayor, supporting Resolution 2021-17, a new fee schedule for the issuance, transfer, renewal, and other related services of medical and marijuana retail licenses, specifically fees.
I'll second the motion.
Moved by Councilor Hershey, second by Councilor Howe. Ryan, can you take the roll call?
Sure can. So for passage of fees.
Is it a tax or a fee?
It's a fee.
Oh.
Mayor Gotis.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
No.
Councilor Hershey.
Yes.
Councilor Cow.
Yes.
Councilor Ruzo.
Yes.
Councilor Stett.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Leone.
Yes.
It passes 6-1. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Success in your first presentation, right?
I'd say more or less. I'd say Carl saved me there. No, I'd say Deborah did too, so thank you guys.
Thanks, for doing that.
All right, we have the full contingency of RAPTA, the full weight and breadth of RAPTA. Oh gosh, we have even more. Good word. Swarming us.
And Kurt Rabenschlag is online too, and I think he will do the speaking for RAPTA and Dan and Nick will. So if you wouldn't mind bringing Kurt over, and I will bring.
I don't see Kurt.
He's on cell phone. Oh, he's on cell phone.
I don't have anybody that's, at least from my participation list, I don't have anybody. Okay.
But we have Nick here too.
I'd rather hear from Nick.
I think Terry is completely capable of doing the presentation.
Tim Sullivan texted me and said that you did a really good job, and it's a fair cut.
Yeah. As soon as I figure out the Zoom thing. I think you guys, hold on.
You have it.
I did. Now, hold on. All right, back up. I'll try to speak quickly before it goes away again. Oh, it's not sure. Oh. find it. Yeah, go back out of all of those. Okay, thank you. Good evening again, Council. This is related to the IGA that the city has with RACTA. Also, well, regarding the IGA regards the underpasses that we are trying to build at the intersection of 27th and State Highway 82. So here you can see just a representation of those underpasses. The area in blue is the Rio Grande Trail on the west side. The sidewalk connection that exists today and the future sidewalk connection that would be built with the project. Along with the underpasses themselves, the underpass under 27th and the underpass on Interstate Highway 82. So the city has, looked at this IGA in the past to agree on funding for the project. So in the past, the city has looked at the funding scenario for the project, and just briefly, RAPTA is funding this through their Destination 2040 tax measure. They allocated $4.3 million in that Destination 2040 tax measure. I'm going to just give up on that. They allocated $4.3 million in the Destination 2040 tax measure, and they have also in conjunction with the city, gone ahead and looked for grants for the project. So we have 3 different CDOT grants totaling about $3.1 million for the project, adding to that pot of money. The overall project cost right now is estimated at $10.1 million. The city's contributed $500,000 so far. Tonight, we'd like to ask, to finish the funding conversation, we did still have a funding gap, and RAPTA looked again at that Destination 2040 tax measure and recognized that there were some projects that hadn't been completed either due to COVID or other reasons. So they took that funding and also added it to the overall funding pot. So RAPTA is really supplementing this project to the tune of over $7 million. And we do have those grants from CDOT and then the city's $500,000 towards the project. So what we would like to ask the council for tonight is consideration of the maintenance provisions for the IGA. So how RAPTA has done their maintenance for the other underpasses that they've done up Valley is to turn the maintenance of the underpass over to the local jurisdiction. And in this case, we have 2 underpasses. Initially our proposal was that, or RAPTA's preference was that we would maintain the State Highway 2 underpass. But after conversations with Brian and his staff, we agreed that it was going to be difficult to, it was going to be difficult for Brian to move crews from essentially where they stopped today, which is on the Rio Grande Trail, which is the 23rd, and then to bring them over here to try and maintain the State Highway 2 tunnel, as well as the existing sidewalk that's adjacent to the Colorado Mountain Express being moved there. So we talked about trying to compromise, changing the maintenance a little bit so that we would maintain from 23rd all the way through the 27th Street tunnel. And then RAPTA would take responsibility for, the continuation of the Rio Grande Trail to the south, as well as the State Highway 2 tunnel and the maintenance of that area that's immediately adjacent to the BRT facility. So we have worked in conjunction with them to try to adjust this maintenance agreement to something that Brian and our staff think that they can live with. And we've also talked about how to split utilities in the maintenance agreement, as well as things like cameras and snow melt systems that are going to be needed for the area on the BRT there. In addition to council's approval of the IGA, we would ask that the council allocate another $250,000 of the city's funds in the 2022 budget towards this project to help cover costs for snow melt and for the additional sidewalk that we'd like to add on the Roaring Fork School District side, this piece of sidewalk here that would connect down to the dealership, just to create as many options through the area as we can. So with that, I will open it up for any questions.
Oh. If we didn't include that extra sidewalk, would the cost be less than $250,000?
You know, the snow melt system on itself is an addition to the project that we need to cover, and, you know, we don't have final bids on the project yet. We're anticipating, you know, some fluctuations in cost, so we still feel like it would be a good idea to keep that $250,000 so that we can cover fluctuating costs through the bid.
That you can cover potential costs.
Potential costs for the bid.
And the other projects that RAFTA wasn't able to do, and so they moved some money to go into the underpass. And Dan, this might be a question for you, somebody else from RAFTA, but does that mean if those projects were in Glenwood, they're never getting done, that were part of our early agreement?
I think I'm going to need RAFTA to comment on that.
Because some of those were Glenwood oriented, correct?
Yes, talking really about the extension of the BRT service to the west of Glenwood Springs. Originally, it was planned to come downtown, and to a transit center in the downtown area. And then the other piece of that was the extension of the local bus service to, instead of going on 8th Street to Midland to Wolsholm to West Glenwood Springs parking lot, to go across the bridge on Highway 6 and 24, and then free up that corridor for West Glenwood Springs so that the resources that are used to pay for it could maybe be used to pay for microtransit services or something like that in residential areas. With COVID, everything really got disrupted. So we took the funding, I think in our plan, those service extensions were intended to begin in 2020. And we really reconfigured our services and scaled back and so forth. So we're using that funding that was available for then to, for a couple of years of that, which I think totals about $700,000 to help offset the shortfall on the underpass project. We believe that in terms of those resources being available for those extensions in the future, they'll still be.
Okay.
But there are things to work through. We're trying to figure out how to get the BRT buses through town efficiently, so that they can be reliable, and also before Tanya left to go to work for Eagle County, and the study for the microtransit services was completed. There was a notion that during the peak times for the local bus service, that would be kind of assuming that West Glenwood Springs route, that the buses that are coming from down Valley start running way behind schedule. And so there might need to be some peak period times when West Glenwood would still need to be operated to ensure reliability in that schedule. So there are things to work out, is what I'm saying, for those service extensions, but that funding is still going to be there when the time comes.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, is if we're still being, thank you.
Maybe could have answered that about 5 minutes ago.
That's good.
Thank you.
And then, I'm not sure, Terry, if this is you or if this is RAFTA, but if we take ownership of the underpass as part of this IGA, are we responsible for repairs on the underpass? If something happens liability-wise, if somebody's injured, does that mean the city is responsible for whatever might happen in that underpass, construction-wise or personal liability?
I'm going to let Carl comment on liability.
Well, I'll start with your government entity, so yes, of course, you'll get sued. Sorry, I just pushed the button too. Fortunately, my, live comments aren't on tape. There would be, obviously, you could be a potentially named party because there was something wrong, slip and fall. We see those, frankly, on a fairly regular basis. That's the purpose of the government act, is to provide some protection surrounding those kinds of incidents. So it's not really, it doesn't heighten our exposure any more than maintaining any of the other roads or streets we have maintained.
So if the construction is bad and the whole thing just falls apart in 10 years?
That's a whole, that's a whole different thing regarding construction and acceptance, and that's more of a contract issue, and a warranty issue that's being handed off. And so that's, those, there again, that's a contractual issue typically. The same route would have a 2-year warranty, and then obviously the defect that, the latent defect is not identified that we can tie back. There are some other remedies that are there again, not any different than what's going on now in the South.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, I'll turn it to the public for any comments. Any public in the room like to comment? Sheila?
Thank you again, Robert Gavrell, the Transportation Commission. I wasn't here to talk on this issue, but this is something the Transportation Commission has looked at. We're generally in favor of the underpass as a structure. I think it's going to improve the whole. That's good. To the comments that Mr. Blankenship had said about some of the delayed funding that's helped fund it, I just want to remind the commission, the council, or those members that may not be aware, the commission is very much in favor of working with RAPTA to extend the local service to continue on 624 long term. In our role, in our view, the best role to be served by RAPTA is maintaining the arterial routes and the regional transportation network. 1624 is a highway. A large portion of our citizens live along that highway. It makes all the sense in the world to us to see RAPTA service continue there so that they don't have to exchange, go from one system to another as they are transporting themselves valley and down valley. We do understand some of the problems with getting right limit to supplement that line when it may run late in the afternoons. But it is a priority, and we urge it to be a priority for council to work with RAPTA to get them to take over the 624 line as soon as possible, so right limit can be repurposed to do better work for our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gavrell. Anybody else in the audience? Anybody else online? Kurt, we promoted you over to a panelist. Do you have any other comments?
I do not believe Dan Blankenship answered all the questions.
Thanks, Kurt. All right, I'll bring it back to council for a motion.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Mayor, if nobody else wants to support the rafting funding in Mason's IGA for 27th Street.
So moved by Councilor Hershey, seconded by Councilor Kopp. Any further discussion?
Is there, I do have probably a question, but maybe amongst us, is this something that we'd want to split, like 50-50? If I understand the agreement in the past, if new stuff came up, we would split it?
That is covered in the IGA, that, it has, within the design process, if there is an owner-driven change, either Raptor by Raptor or the city, those are paid for individually by the owner. But if there's an unforeseen condition that occurs, and it's not likely during the design process, but more likely during the construction process, those unforeseen conditions would be split.
So that was pertaining to my question a little while ago, is do we need the sidewalk, because that seemed like it was something that the city of Glenwood wanted, and if we remove that, it still looks like it's $250,000. Then do we look at a split? So
What sidewalk are you talking about rebuilding?
This one.
The one along the school side.
School side, okay.
Right. But, and then that's a question for us.
As well, is, it sounds like city staff feels that would be a convenience, to add that sidewalk to this piece.
So is that
So I'm asking, is this something we want to split and remove the sidewalk, and would you consider that?
I will consider anything, Paul.
I would not consider that in my second, just because I feel like this project is over a $10 million improvement, safety improvement to this intersection and to the trail. And a sidewalk access along that very busy section of 27th Street, to access the Rio Grande Trail and the 82 underpass is just an important piece. So the value that the city of Goma Springs is getting out of this project is, 20 times what we're putting into it or more. So I think there's value here and that we should go ahead and put this on.
Go ahead. Sorry, Charlie, Ingrid, go ahead, Charlie.
I would pick up a lot of maintenance responsibility. For some reason, maybe it's me, I would think that this is a benefit to CDOT because it really helps our traffic flows and stuff. They had to be doing some of the maintenance of one of the towns or both of them. We're picking up the maintenance on the Rio Grande Trail, which is going to be not an unsubstantial long-term cost. So I kind of support what Paul is thinking, that splitting this extra 250 with perhaps with the idea that we can pick up some more maintenance stuff. So that's why I kind of leave it this way.
Great.
I see excellent in that it is a health and safety concern. Like, those are always the huge priorities with how we allocate funds. And I also think it's really important to consider that we are only committing to 10% of this project, and yet the city of Glenwood, I think, really gets to harness the majority of benefit from this project in keeping our constituents safe. My hesitation is that this is an estimate. As we all know, construction projects usually increase during the project, not even at this front end. So my hesitancy is that we commit to another 250 and then we're halfway through the project and then it ramps up again. So I would lean more towards, we'll commit half, so 125, which kind of aligns with you and Charlie, and just say that, while we really do appreciate this opportunity and certainly the creativity that Rafa has looked at their own budget to fund, I just don't feel comfortable giving the full amount right now.
Any other comments, questions?
Oh, briefly, I just wanted to echo what Shelley said. This is a major, and I think Dan would confirm this as safety issue. We had a death there a couple of years ago, less than a year ago, and it's very unsafe. And I think Charlie makes or was it Charlie or Paul or Shelley about this? You want to have as much access to this as you don't want people crossing here if there's no parking or no sidewalk by the school property. So I'm going to stand by the motion as I've made it.
Okay, Ryan, let's come to roll call.
Sounds good. Councilor Davis.
No.
Mayor Gross.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Willman.
No.
Councilor Seth.
Drum roll.
Yes.
Councilor Carroll.
Yes.
Councilor Russo.
No.
Councilor Hershey.
Yes.
It passes 4-3.
Thank you, Councilor.
All right, the next item on the.
Thank you, Dan. His name I forgot. Thank you, Dan. Nail biter. I was waiting for Paul.
Yes.
Can we take, are we going to be able to take a quick break or no?
We only have two more items.
Get charged for it.
Okay?
Yeah.
We are.
As long as outdoor dining regulations is not along.
I like eating outdoors. I can be quick.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Council. Matt Nunez, Economic Development Specialist. Here for a couple items related to outdoor dining, mainly looking at how we move beyond the pandemic regulations, which last year, as you'll recall, we waived all fees and all leasing application fees related to outdoor dining, both the lease area for the space and also the administrative fees. And we also allowed the construction of parklets within the right-of-way while expanding outdoor dining and liquor premises for restaurants in Grand Avenue Bridge. We're looking for guidance on how we proceed with these regulations. We are currently planning and recommending to reinstate the lease and application fees now that our restaurants are mostly back at capacity and back to pre-pandemic revenue numbers for the most part. And also seeking council guidance on the use of parklets in the public right-of-way. So over the past year, we've had 3 restaurants which have constructed these outdoor dining areas in parking stalls in the downtown core. 2 of them are still in place, and both of those use 2 parking spaces. One of which is in front of their business, and one of which is in front of a neighboring business. So we're seeking guidance on whether to continue to allow this and whether or not to restrict the size, any design or safety standards. We fully plan to implement all pre-COVID regulations of fire inspection, safety inspections that we typically have on the city, asking for guidance specifically on the rent.
Any questions? Charlie?
Matt, do we know of anyone else who's interested in parklets? I know, I just forgot the name, the restaurant on the corner of the Cooper, I can't remember.
Solid Curl?
Oh,
Pullman?
No.
Yes.
Lucy.
Pullman. Thank you. Brain dead. Pullman had a parklet last year, but they're not this year. Are they interested coming back? Is there any other interest in any other restaurants, say at Grand Avenue, for instance? We have a couple restaurants there.
I've not received any indication of other restaurants wanting to use the right-of-way. There are a few more restaurants that have either applied or are planning to apply for outdoor dining underneath the bridge or on the sidewalk.
Will, if we reinstate the permitting process and everything, is that a somewhat more streamlined process, or will it, because we kind of threw the doors wide open, right? So a lot of the, like, fencing and things that some of the restaurants use maybe wasn't up to our old standards. Will this new permitting process or reinstating it require change on that, or will what they constructed in the last year be able to remain on that?
Sure, and we do have guidelines and design standards from 2019 for our 2019 application and checklist, which do provide layouts. Your fencing must be sturdy, cannot be blown over. You must provide walls. You can't just have open seating. So we would recommend keeping all of those with perhaps the removal, depending on your decision, of the piece that does not allow construction right away.
Okay.
Okay, that's clear.
Great. All right.
Any other questions? All right, this is I'll open up to the public. Anybody from the public like to comment on this? Yes, you've been very patient with letting us into the public. Sir, come on up and give us your name, you live in the city, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Steve Deslank. I'm the owner of Solid Curry, which we have 2 of those parks. I live at 728 and a half Cooper, so I live right next to the restaurant. First, I'd like to thank the council for letting us use those parks at no cost. During the COVID, when we had limited seating, it really helped us out. We came through pretty good because we have a lot of takeout during that period of time, but it sure helps to have that additional seating. I would ask that council renew that Last year, we left ours up during the winter time, and it was a problem with snow. So my suggestion for our two parklets would be that we take it down maybe sometime in October, when it starts snowing, and then put it back up, maybe in free or not free. I think we'd be very interested in leasing that space.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Anybody else in the public like to comment? Anybody from the virtual, public like to comment?
Virtually.
Seeing none, I will bring it back to council for motion. Councilor Wilson. I'm sorry, Councilor
Davis.
Davis is what I.
Well, I didn't really have a motion, but I just want to make a comment.
No, yep, you have to do that then.
So I will make a motion that we.
Well, I'll make a motion.
No.
Oh, I thought you were gonna make one.
Go, Charlie, it better be a good one. All right, go, you.
Well, being that we're not really fully beyond the pandemic and these restaurants have not really fully recovered, I would make a motion that we continue as we have in the past year with these restaurants and their outdoor dining. I would limit that. Now I'm going to comment on my own motion, but I think there's less of a demand now for outdoor dining, but still not everybody is comfortable with indoor dining. So as, you know, that's occurred, I think that you could shrink those spaces and still maintain that opportunity for people to come have outdoor dining for those people who are comfortable.
Question.
I'm going to second his motion so that
Thank
we're
you.
actually doing this right.
Thank you. Do you have a question on the motion, Paul? Was there a second?
I do.
There was a
Yeah,
second by Ingrid. Yes.
I just have a question, clarification. Are these double parklets or single parklets comparable in size to other locations that have gotten outdoor dining?
I don't have the size numbers right in front of me.
I just kept inching closer. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Just wanted to answer that question quickly. I think essentially what the regulations say is that before we allowed some parklets, it was just that space that is in front of the business immediately. And then it is now deeper than that under the bridge. So I would say that they are larger because they have a different kind of real estate than a place that, like Musala and Curry, where they have one stall and then it's the roadway. And so I would say that in general, they don't have enough.
The ones, the parklets or
The parklets do not have, and because there is more depth under the bridge, going closer to the bridge, I mean, they're larger.
Based on square footage.
Based on square footage.
Are you good?
Oh, I just have a question.
Have we had any other restaurants contact us with a request to have parklets?
Yes, Bluebird Cafe submitted an application right there on the sidewalk, similar to that's west side of the bridge. And I guess that's another question. I guess I would ask you. It's a similar situation with Musala and Curry, where they want to construct not only in front of Bluebird but in front of Bullock's, which is a separate business but the same building.
Shelley, then.
I just had a comment
to me, it seems like restricting it to one parklet. A parking space is typically 20 feet.
Should be, like 8 or 9 by 24.
Right.
Or 23. If some of them are.
So larger than I thought. I was thinking one parking space seems small.
It's as wide as a building.
Yeah, a 25-foot lot.
Steve, did you also include in your motion you want to waive the fees again?
I do. You know, I think can you tell me what the gross fees are that we've received like in 2019?
I don't have the gross fees, but I can tell you, the amount that we charge is $75 administrative fee, and then $1.75 per square foot.
So it's not really significant to the city or to these restaurants, really, it's just salt and wood. Trying to recover.
I have a comment, I can't support Steve's motion for a couple of reasons. I think that, for Heavenly Pizza, I think it's Heavenly Pizza is what they call, I've been by there several times. They have 2 parklets in.
Rocky Mountain.
Rocky Mountain, thank you. And they have, I can't remember, they have any business.
It tastes heavenly.
Yeah, I know, it is, yeah.
It's a name for pizza.
But they're all those outside tables are full, and if you look inside, they're half full, so I can't support that, and to me, we're giving them a license to do something, I don't think the fee is significant. We waived it because they weren't, because of the COVID, and because of the restrictions, so I can't support for either of those reasons.
So are you saying that you want them to have more outdoor space or less outdoor space?
No,
Or no outdoor space?
No outdoor space like they do now, if they get the neighbor's permission. I think we just ought to follow staff's recommendation, that we put the fees back, and we let them, if they get permission of the neighboring property. I don't think we're losing maybe one more parking space, 2 parking spaces downtown. I just don't think it's significant. And I think if we can help these businesses get more revenue, that helps us on tax revenue if we get there too. So I can't support it.
Well, why don't we clarify your motion? I had in my motion reduced their space from 2 spaces to 1 space, feeling that we were at a point in this pandemic where more people were comfortable eating indoors, so that demand for outdoor dining has been reduced by that.
Yeah.
And that was the whole reason why we did that in the first place.
However, your motion also, staff recommendation right now is to reinstate the fees. Your recommendation is to put the fees on us.
Yeah.
Okay. For a period of how long?
For another year.
Jill is a second, and it's totally.
And I guess I would prefer to, what are we saying? I'd rather follow the staff recommendation. Let's put the fees and the permitting process back in place. But I'm okay if they need 2 parking spaces. I think that expanded outdoor dining, maybe not used as much right now because it's been so stinking hot. But once we get, when we have a relief from the heat, I think people like to sit outside. And so I'd rather see a motion.
So let's take a vote on this motion, see how it goes. Brian?
All right, I amend my motion.
Too late, we're voting.
Yeah.
New rules that come with this.
All right, Counselor Calvin.
No.
Counselor Hershey.
Yes.
Counselor Wusso.
Yes.
Mayor Gotis.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Willman.
No.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Counselor
No.
Okay. It fails 4.5 to 2.5.
I would move we adopt the staff's recommendation as set forth in the,
What is the difference between the staff's recommendation, Charlie, and Steve's motion, particularly that you're?
I've already stated it, that they can get neighboring parking spaces.
But they just have to.
And we gotta put the fees back in place. So my motion is to adopt the staff's recommendation as set forth in the staff report.
I'll second that motion.
Ryan? I'm sorry,
Can I have clarification on one thing? And that is the spaces that are now down under the bridge, their size would remain the same?
Yeah. Other comments? Ryan, go.
Feeling good. Mayor Pro Tem Willman.
Yes.
Counselor Wusso.
Oh, yes.
Mayor Gotis.
No.
Counselor Stepp,
Yes.
Counselor Cowell,
Yes.
Counselor Hershey,
Yes.
and Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Well, I was waiting for the motion that I supported it.
They can't do two, because,
If they get their neighbors.
the neighbors permission.
Well, I must have been.
You didn't clarify.
No, you could.
It passes five.
It's probably from the neighbor's property, I think it's.
How come Tony gets 6-1 without all this trouble? I can't vote against anything.
I do it all the time.
All right.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Matt, thanks.
All right, next item is, thank you very much, Matt, with the assist from Jen. Mr. Nicolani, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I can say real quick, when Governor Polis came and said, what do you suggest for a restaurant? I said, man, my favorite restaurant is the Solitary. Now, every restaurant downtown in this city is fantastic, but he asked me my personal recommendation is your guys' restaurant.
Thank you very much.
You did a great job.
You did a great job.
And he liked that food, it isn't just the mayor, but. No, yeah, no.
Thank you very much.
Have a great night. All right, last item on the agenda is the compensation study report. We're 2 minutes behind.
Excuse me, we have, our consultant is on Zoom.
Oh, wonderful. Yes.
Is that okay? I just need 5 minutes.
Yep, we'll adjourn for 5 minutes. We'll be back at 8:18.
I'm out here on the end,
You bet. Why didn't we put a 5-minute break in it? Now we're.
I know, it's only one thing.
No, you're fine. No, it's my fault we didn't put a break in. I was just so fixated.
and Lori is supposed to do the presentation.
Yeah, great. That's true. Good evening. Thank you guys for listening and for all your work. And welcome back. So we have Lori Graves of Graves Consulting on the phone with us. I believe. Lori, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Are you able to hear me?
We are, yes.
Wonderful.
Lori's going to do the presentation and I'll go through the slides and thank you.
Okay, we ready to go?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I can't hear very well.
Yes, we are. We're good to go, Lori.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, thank you all very much for letting me join your meeting this evening. And I wish that I could be there in person, but hopefully we'll be able to get through this efficiently and have plenty of time to answer any questions. And I really just want to start by saying what we're presenting here this evening has been a very collaborative effort. It has not just been Graves Consulting doing the work. Your leadership team there with the city has been very engaged, specifically Deborah, Dana, Yvette, and Steve. And so I really want to say how much I appreciate that, because it makes the finished product so much more robust when it is done collaboratively like that. So there were a lot of time and resources and effort put into this, and I very much appreciate it. So I know you have a busy agenda and it's late in the evening, so I'm going to try to go through this quickly enough to be respectful of your time, but also pausing to make sure if there are any questions that they're answered this evening. So if you can advance.
There, okay.
Okay. So the intent and scope of the project is probably not a surprise to any of you. Obviously, it is critically important for the city to be able to both recruit and retain the top talent that you have to make sure that you're prepared to, support the needs of your growing community. What we need to do with the compensation structure is not only ensure that your wages are competitive to the market, but also make sure that the structure and the way it's designed supports career progression and appropriate wage growth for your employees. Again, what our goal is to make sure that what you have are people who are not just coming there for a job, but they're coming there for a career. So it is something we focus on from a design standpoint, and we'll talk about that. The scope of the project from our perspective was to provide recommendations to the city to update your pay structure, to also look at benefits and do a comparison on your benefit plans based on market. So again, we're looking at kind of a view of total compensation. We want to make sure that we're gathering statistically valid market data and that we're doing that from a defined area that is appropriate for the city. So we'll talk about that pretty specifically. And in addition to making recommendations on the structure currently, we've included recommendations for implementation and for ongoing maintenance. Right? Our goal when we end a project like this is that you as a city have everything you need to not only make sure your pay plan is current right now, but to maintain it on your own internally for several years and keep it current. Okay, next slide. So this is just a very high-level overview of the deliverables from this project. So kind of a one-page executive summary of what all we set out to accomplish during this project. Right? We started from reviewing and analyzing everything related to your current state, your current wage structure, your classification system, your job descriptions, your org charts, everything that would give us information about where the city sits now relative to compensation. We then spent a good amount of time with the leadership team, the full leadership team, creating a definition of market, defining the market that the city wishes to compare itself to. Right? To be able to say to your employees and to the public that you have a market-based pay system, to me, it is also important to be able to define what that means and indicate who it is you're choosing to compare yourself to so that you can see that it really is a robust view of market. We then reviewed existing wage survey data that was collected from several different relevant statistically valid market studies. Most of them centered right in Colorado. A few were more national based on some very specific areas, such as broadband and electric and things like that. Most of our data was from Colorado specific sources. We, in addition to doing that, once we pulled all of that data, we then recommended both pay structures and placements of position within those structures based on the market data that we gathered. We also provided analysis and recommendation for implementation. And you'll hear a lot more about implementation as we get towards the end of this, I think specifically from Deborah. We looked at internal equity for positions. We looked at pay compression. We looked at opportunities and structure and guidelines for ongoing maintenance and for communication with the employees, because I do think that is a critically important part of the process, right? The city has spent a lot of time and resources ensuring that this is right, and being able to share that process and those results with your employees, I think is very important. We also provided, as we talked about, a high-level benefit plan comparison, and we'll go through that in a little bit of detail. And then this wraps up with a comprehensive final report that will cover all of these things that I've just talked about, but in a lot more detail. Okay. So now these next few slides, I'm just going to give a little bit more context to what we just outlined. So when we talk about the process and methodology for a study like this, in my view, there are really two primary issues that are foundational to getting this right. The first one that we mentioned just briefly is this idea of creating a definition of market and being able to specifically say who you're going to compare yourself to and why, and where you're going to be able to get that data, right? It removes the opportunity for what I would call kind of cherry picking, right? And just picking the results that give you the number that you're looking for. So at the beginning of this project, we met with the entire leadership team. We talked about the scope and the intent. We talked about the process, and we had an opportunity for the leadership team to share any areas of concern related to pay that exist, so that we were sure we had the right context. We then, as I mentioned, facilitated a deeper conversation to talk about that definition of market, which we'll show in a few more slides. And then we went a step further, and we met individually with every department head across the city, and we talked specifically about each position that exists in their department, to make sure that we, as an external resource, really understood what it was you were asking of each of these positions, right? We do a lot of municipal compensation work, and we do most of that within the state of Colorado. So many of these jobs are familiar to us. But what we also know is that at each entity, at each organization, there is something a little different or unique about those jobs, right? The way jobs have evolved over time, the needs of your particular city, might mean that that job looks a little bit different. So we want to make sure we understand all those nuances before we go out and pull market data. So when I talked about the two most foundational things, it is determining the market that you'll compare yourself to and ensuring a deep understanding of each job so that you're pulling appropriate data from that market. So the definition of market, again, we think this is really important. That's why we're dedicating a couple of slides to it. This was not created by Graves Consulting. This was created through a facilitated process and done collaboratively with the leadership team, thinking about the specific needs of each individual area, but crafting an overall definition of market that would apply to the entire city. So we don't have a different process and a different way of looking at it with different departments, but we looked at the needs and the comparables and who you compete with in all the different areas to create it, right? Our suggestion is that it be a very broad definition and that it include a wide variety of entities and municipalities, not only closely located to you, but across the state that might be similar to you in other ways, because it's important to make sure that we're able to get enough data that it is statistically valid, right? We know this doesn't mean the city competes with every single of these organizations for employees, but again, we need a broad enough data sample to say that this is relevant data, right? We know that not every organization has positions that match yours. So the more we include, the more valid the data is. So this is just simply a snapshot taken directly from the definition of market that we created for the city. And one of the things I think that is important to understand is that our two primary data sources for being able to access all this information is through the wage survey that is conducted by Employers Council, previously Mountain States Employers Council, and through Colorado Municipal League. Employers Council is a fabulous resource within the state of Colorado. They do a great job of collecting and scrubbing wage data. When they do that, they break the data into areas, which is why we have identified those areas on this definition of market. So again, we talk specifically about organizations within what they call the resort area, and we list all of the counties that includes, and that means each of the municipalities within those counties. And then we also included the Denver Boulder area, knowing that you have to compete with those types of wages, right, for in your area. So we list specifically the counties that are considered part of the Denver Boulder area in that survey. Right? We did talk about the fact that the one thing that can vary from municipality to municipality is based on size. When you get into some of the higher management level positions, you know, a city that employs 250 people versus a city that employs 2,000 people, at that leadership level, that span and scope can be a little bit different. So we do adjust on some of those higher level jobs to make it relevant for the size of your city. It's not as much of an issue for entry level jobs, right? If you are a water treatment plant operator, a larger city might have more of you, but the work is probably substantially similar. But as you get into bigger leadership roles, there is a difference, right? So we make an adjustment for that. And we also do include private sector data where we can obtain it, because Employers Council does include private sector data in their information. We included that for the same areas that we talked about. So I know that's a ton of information. I'll pause for just a second to see if there are questions on that.
And please speak up, she's having a hard time hearing.
I'm sorry, I can't quite hear.
I was just telling them to speak up because it's hard to hear. Question?
Question? No questions.
Awesome. Okay. Then we'll keep on rolling. So as we continue through this process, we've talked about the foundation, we've talked about defining the market, we've talked about where we would get the data. Now let's talk about the data itself, right? From those surveys, the information that we pulled were the actual wages being paid to employees that are doing similar work for each position. Meaning we pulled actual wages as opposed to just the pay ranges that those municipalities use for those positions. That data is reported as well, but we find that what you really need to see is what are people really making in other areas, not just what are the wage ranges, right? Because you don't know if an organization might be paying at the very bottom or paying at the very top. So we pull actual wages. Even though both CML and Employers Council do a great job of scrubbing, because we are only pulling the information from the entities that we've defined, we go through and kind of validate and scrub that again to make sure that there aren't numbers in there that are outliers or anomalies, and also to make some of those adjustments we talked about to account for the uniqueness in the roles of the city compared to what a benchmark job might be. This is really where we spend the bulk of our time, right? If we get this part of it right, the rest is going to flow really easily. So this is critically important. We also endeavor to match as many of the city's positions as we can to these data sources. We find jobs that are good matches, but what we know is that we're not going to find an exact match in the marketplace for every single job that any organization has. There are always a handful of unique jobs that have come to be for a reason that is very specific to your area. And those jobs don't exist in other places. And we would rather place those on the pay structure based on their relative value to the other positions we have benchmarked, and to choose a benchmark that is not really appropriate just to be able to say that every job had a benchmark. Okay, so we'll move on. So, you know, in addition to all of this work, there was a lot of additional analysis that needed to occur. And this is really the part where it was done very collaboratively with your internal team. And I cannot give them enough credit for the time that they spent really thinking through, you know, internal equity and pay compression and implementation scenarios. You know, we went through the census data, we identified financial impact. Again, we talked about where you having pay compression issues, you know, where you've had to hire people at ranges at or above where current people in similar jobs are making, right? That's compression that needs to be dealt with. Where are there jobs where, while the market value might be different, internal equity says they should be the same, and how do we account for that, right? So we spent a lot of time on that. We did go through and do a benefit plan comparison, and we'll talk about that. We provided recommendations for implementation. Again, however, the city really took charge of that and did a fabulous job of building that out. And then we will, in our final report, provide some pretty detailed guidance for ongoing pay structure maintenance so that it can be managed internally for the foreseeable future. Okay, so on our recommendations, we are recommending new redesigned pay structures for general government, for police, for fire, and then for some of the part-time Parks and Rec positions. So general government is pretty much most of your population, everybody outside of public safety. And then police has a separate structure, fire has one, and then your part-time positions. And in addition to recommending those new pay structures, we also recommended placement of each of the positions where it should fall on those pay structures based on the market data that we pulled, right? So from here is where we'll start getting into a lot of the more actual specific information as opposed to just general overview of the project. So within the new general government pay structure that we're recommending, it is similar to what you have right now, but it is different in a few ways. So the first way is range width, right? And range width simply means the distance from the minimum of a range to the maximum of the range, right? Currently, you have ranges that vary from 35% wide to 50% wide. And that's not wrong, right? There is a reason why width matters, and we'll talk about that. And they do tend to vary. We simply brought that down a little bit, tightened it a little bit so that it now really only varies from 40 to 45%. And when we show the actual structure, you'll see that, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. The other, and I think probably more important thing that we did is we made sure that as we built progressive pay grades, that the midpoint of each range was 10% apart from the other, right? Meaning you are never going to have ranges that are so close together they completely overlap. You're also not going to have ranges that are so far apart that if you had to upgrade a position into the next higher range, it wouldn't be a 20 or 25% increase that it would take to get up to that next range, right? We think it's important to have a structure like that so that you have the flexibility you need to move positions with market and from one grade to another as market shifts and changes. The overall number of ranges is very similar. Currently on your general government full-time scale, you have 17 and this one has 15, so very similar. One difference is that currently you have separate pay structures for exempt and non-exempt. They sit separate from each other. There is no cutoff between exempt and non-exempt in what we've designed. They're all in one structure. And we do that because exempt and non-exempt jobs do overlap each other. In other words, there are some non-exempt jobs that have a higher market value than some of the lower level exempt jobs. And when you have to make a hard distinction between them, it can be tougher to place them where they really go. So for simplification and to make sure that you can really be reflective of market, we combine those into one pay structure. Okay, so this is just a visual snapshot of what the new pay structure looks like. You can see there are 15 pay grades. The numbering for those pay grades is irrelevant. Those are simply numbers that I chose to represent the grade. Those could be changed to anything that is appropriate for the city. In my experience, I just generally don't start with grade 1 because nobody likes being in grade 1, right? That just doesn't feel very good. So I start with 10, sometimes I start with 100. Those numbers don't really matter. What matters is the ranges themselves. And what you'll see here is the midpoint and the max of each range. You'll see that spread or that width that we talked about. And what you'll see is that most of the pay grades all the way up through pay grade 19 are 40% wide. And it is only those pay grades towards the top when you get into your higher level leadership roles that get a little bit wider, right? And one of the things that is important about range width is that as you make your ranges wider, just mathematically, it brings the minimum down and it also brings the maximum up. And sometimes when you make them too wide, the minimum of the range is so low that it really has no utility to you. You couldn't bring anybody in at that range minimum. And it also places a range maximum that is so high that it can be frustrating for people when they're never able to attain it. So hitting that sweet spot is important really for that reason. The other thing that you can see represented here is the other item that I talked about, which is the distance between midpoints, and they are all at midpoint 10% apart, right? Which seems like it may not matter, but when certain positions move quicker in the marketplace than others, and you have to upgrade them, it is nice to know that you can count on the predictability of how much it takes to get to that next pay grade. it helps from a consistency standpoint. Okay, any questions on that before we get too far?
I don't think so.
Great. So high-level impact of this type of a change. One thing I think is important to point out, and this is the case really whenever we come in and do a market update or a comp study, when it has been a few years since it's been done, is that some of your positions have changed their relative position, meaning they are either higher or lower than positions they might have been grouped in the same pay grade with before. And that is because we pulled current market data and we based our placement on the structure on that market data. And that has obviously changed in the years that it's been since you've done a study. So we don't just look at where they are now relative to each other and try to make adjustments to everybody. We really start from scratch and place them where we believe they belong based on market, right, and internal relative value. We've talked about this a couple of times. The other thing we consider, market is obviously the primary driver for where positions are placed, but internal equity does matter, right? Ensuring that jobs that have similar span and scope and relative value to the organization are placed similarly on the pay structure, and that when you have progressive positions, that they are also placed in a way that it provides that career growth or that wage growth that we talked about. Right. So for instance, if we go back to our water treatment plant operator, if you have an A, B, a C, and a D, you want to make sure that they are in progressive pay grades so that they can see that wage growth as they progress up through their certifications. There are several positions that, and this probably doesn't come as a surprise to you, that currently have incumbents in them that are below the minimum of the new range. And then there are also several more incumbents who have pay that while is within the new pay range, it is really lower into the range than otherwise their experience and their performance would indicate. So those are the things that you really deal with at implementation. Okay. So then similarly, we talked about there being a separate pay structure for police. When we say separate for police, we are really only talking about the sworn non-exempt police positions. We are not talking about the civilian positions. We're also not talking about the leadership roles. Those would remain on the general government scale. But the sworn non-exempt police positions do very much move differently in the marketplace from general government jobs. And that's really the primary reason for putting them on a separate structure. So that in the future, as you make adjustments to stay tied to market, right? If the public safety market is moving faster, you don't have to either inflate wages for everybody else to make that or keep wages too low for law enforcement. You have separate structures and you can adjust them to market, right? So the police pay structure, this is just a snapshot of what that looks like. Obviously, it's not as big and complex. There are fewer positions encompassed on it, but they have a similar layout. They have a min, a mid, and a max. They are a little bit narrower than what we talked about on the general government. The distance from minimum to maximum is tighter, and that really is primarily to drive an opportunity for your sworn police officers and sergeants to move up to the top of the pay range a little bit quicker, because that's really what it takes to remain competitive in that environment. Fire is laid out very similarly, very similar to the sworn non-exempt. It is on a separate structure. It is the positions that we list here. So all the way up through fire battalion chief, these are essentially your non-exempt positions. As you move into your higher level exempt leadership roles, those also sit on the general government structure. So a very similar layout, and you can see right here, it looks very similarly. Interestingly, the numbers are even surprisingly similar because that's the way they played out. Now there are more positions that exist within the fire, so you see a larger pay structure to be able to differentiate those ranges. There is one range in there that's repeated, so I apologize for that, but you can see the ranges that are on here. And that's for placing the different levels of firefighter, the different levels of paramedic, all the way up through, right, your fire battalion chief. So this is probably the part you're all looking for. And I will turn this over to Deborah to talk through the implementation and the cost and the funding.
Thank you, Lori. Okay, the total impact for this, we are either doing a
wage adjustment based upon the salary survey and/or a 2% for all employees. This way, you get whatever is greater for you, or 2%, or the full implementation. So general fund and fire, the cost of this will be just under $1 million. Water, wastewater, $154,850. Broadband, $48,000. Electric, $53,000. Landfill, just under $75,000. Lot 26, fleet 33,000. So the total impact in the 2022 budget of just under $1.4 million across all funds. Because we feel like this is something we need to do now. We did not get pay increases at all in 2021. We are asking if you guys approve this to let us implement it on August 1st. The cost of that in the general fund will be just under $500,000 for this year. All budgets outside of the general fund did indeed budget for increases because we knew this was coming. So we feel confident we can, our budgets can afford this, and they really can because we budgeted so conservatively for 2021. We budgeted 10% under 2019 actuals. When you guys did a budget amendment, we brought you up to 2019 actuals. Currently, we are, if you compare 2019 to where we are now, we are 18% up. So, what we're really doing is we are taking the extra money we anticipate to get into the general fund this year and reinvesting it into our employees who are our greatest asset. And the job market is so competitive right now, we really feel it's a good thing to do soon. Oh, that, Lori, I know they're itching to get out, so I think I'm gonna see if they have any questions now or a motion.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I just had a question. What's our total salary budget right now? The city.
Across all funds?
That's what you're asking for, across all funds, right?
So what are we paying currently? Like if we add this, or if we?
No, like currently.
I don't know if it has that. I do not have that.
Okay.
I can get it.
That's okay. It's just my role to ask questions you can't answer. So
Thank you.
So generally, Deborah, we would answer that. Isn't the salary a percentage of our overall general fund, for instance?
Yeah, and we do, I know, I have looked at that.
I have a full one here. It is, percentage of overall, I'm sorry, Charlie, percentage of overall spending, it goes from 22% to 23.1% across all funds. And in the general fund, it goes from 60.1% to 62%.
So we have a general fund of 18 million roughly.
Right.
And that 60% of that is salary.
Right,
Exactly. $20 million general.
Yeah, $20 million.
Yeah.
General fund, 60% is salary.
16%.
60. In the 60.
Yeah.
60. In the general fund.
About.
Approximately, yeah.
That's just the general fund.
Yeah.
Which includes the police and fire, which.
That's like 8%. Thank you.
Okay. That helps, Steve?
So if that is, okay, never mind, I'll wait for a motion. Oh, the question, yeah, sorry.
Dana, do you, remind me, how often are com studies done? It's up to the city manager's discretion and the recommendation of the staff, but this is the first one we've done in 5 years. Okay.
And do you feel with these recommendations that this will make it an easier goal to fill these positions?
Both and. I do think it'll help. I think it will help tremendously with retention, which is ultimately what I think my interest is we've already invested in training people and we've got amazing staff. So I'm very invested in retaining the staff that and the talent that we have. Sure. So then I will wait for a comment until, but I've had an intimate conversation
with Dana about employee retention and the cost of maintaining, but I'll wait until the conversation.
Question, Chairman? No, I will make a motion.
Motion, Chairman.
I move to adopt the staff's recommendation that both we increase these in 2022 and we start this meet, was it August 1st?
August 1st.
August 1st.
Second.
Has been moved by Charlie, seconded by Tony. Comment?
Yeah, and then my comment was just that I had an opportunity to actually ask about Paul Dana and ask questions about the cost to the city when we lose an employee and we have to retrain one, or we have to hire a new one. And just that onboarding cost can be, almost, up to 6 months or more of a salary. So by increasing these, you're saying the retention should be easier to attain. Yes, I hope so. That is definitely the goal, and just simply would be the result. No promises, but.
Okay.
And more of a comment, this is a $1.3 million budget question, which
Basically, I heard about, get details on this week, had a brief conversation with one of the council person staff, and I understand the need, but I feel like
these are kind of questions that we should be discussing as a group when we're talking about this much money in a change in our budget, when we have so many projects and things that are always at the top of our list. I do think that we need to retain employees. I do think that, in general, this is the direction we should be going.
but I do feel like also, this is like, okay, we need to do this now, and
Have it completed on August 1st, and we're making a decision for 2022. So I just kind of feel like this is a backward way to go through a big number question. I'd like that not to happen again, I guess, coming my way, is just we have a chance as a council to talk about it, and really kind of digest what's going on. I also want to comment that, and I made this comment in a smaller meeting, is that in this business of
city government, as well as every other business I've been in,
it's a little incestuous. People trade employees all the time. And our employees here ourselves, we picked up a great landfill manager from Pitkin County. I just happen to know that we had an employee from Carbondale that we picked up for water treatment. So this kind of back and forth goes on all the time, and I've seen that happen in every industry. So
I don't want to live on the edge of fear that, okay, we have to make all our decisions because we're going to lose employees. There's always going to be that.
So those are just general questions, comments on this. I do feel like we need to make this change, but I would love to see it make this change in a more reasonable manner rather than we need to make a decision. You're going to tell you about it on Monday or Tuesday, and on Thursday night, we want to know what's going on. So that's how I feel about this right now.
Any other comments, questions? Go ahead, Joe.
I just comment, I know, I talked to, I don't have any lawyers that I actually bring my office on a small firm, but, when you're bringing the lawyer, trying to train him and get him up to speed, it takes a lot of money and resources. And I don't think we can take the risk of losing what I think is an excellent staff. I'm not thrilled about spending this much more money on anything, but I trust one to study, I trust Dana and Deborah for coming back, and Lori's done a good job, I think, at analyzing it. So I think this tells our employees who was the lifeblood of the city and is going to provide the services to our citizens. I think we owe it to them to adopt this recommendation.
Other comments or questions? This is a $1.3 million contemplation, so I think we should open it to public comment. Maybe from the public like to, maybe from staff like to be so no one? No,
Well, I did want to say, you see Chief Darius there, and one area is they just can't find people, and we're short. How many officers, Chief? 10 policemen. 10 in a department this size. It's scary. The public safety issue.
I agree.
Let's take the vote.
Did you want to get public comment? Is there anybody out in the video audience?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think it's important, I really appreciate the study that's been done and the depth of it. And, you know, it's important to go every 5 years or so and really look at where we sit in the level of other like communities across the state, because that's who we're competing with. And we want to keep quality staff, we want to be able to recruit and hire them, and as well as keep them once they're on board. So I think it's really important. I appreciate the addressing the equity issues also within the department, but also, and you know, getting our pay up to a point where the employees happy, hopefully. And it sounds like we have a good benefit package also.
We do, we skipped that slide with those that are great. And Paula, just to address your comment about the 2 staff we did pull over, we had to hire them both kind of in the new market. We knew this, we were kind of in the middle of this. And so with both of those employees, we did kind of know what the market data was pointing at, and were able to offer them based on the more competitive ranges of where they would probably be, not on where our current ranges were. So I don't know if that helps you feel any better, but.
No, it's more a question of timing and having, have time to contemplate this and determine. So.
And it's not like I don't support this.
Right, no, I didn't hear that.
This was really.
Good turnaround, it's something we're supposed to implement.
Okay. When did you have an adjustment last? Like that?
That was, I think it was about 4 years ago we did one, yeah.
I mean, you know, somebody like me, I mean, this seems like a shockingly big number, but when you start running the percentages to it, it's really not significant. You know, you're talking about maybe 11% overall, or an average of 6% per employee, and that's going to efficiently run the business. Is what I wish that I could run a business and maintain employees for that kind of a percentage.
And I think if it helps, you know, it's really kind of 2 years, right? It's 2021 and 2022, because we did not give raises in 2021 because we didn't know where we were going to be.
Did that also just not only raises, but a standard cost of living increase as well?
We did that too,
Yeah.
So.
Our revenue,
Right.
or exceeding what we thought to see.
Mayor, good.
Yes.
We'll count that as 2. Councilor Cow.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wellman.
Yes.
Councilor Wusu.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Councilor Hershey.
Yes.
All right. That's like 9-0.
There you go. Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Lori.
We're so fortunate to have you all. We so appreciate it.
Thank you.
Lori, thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Everybody, Chief Derrick, turn that Citizens Academy into a real academy and start filling the spot.
I'll take a gun and a badge.
No.
You and I could ride together.
Okay, guys, get this done.
All right, next item, report from city administration. Deborah.
Thank you.
All right. I'm good. Correspondence incoming, outgoing. Meeting adjourned.
All right.
You guys.